All right, guys, back on the air here. We're going to keep up our theme going. Now, during the holiday times, I've got my sweet set of holiday ties, and normally after the AP exam, I break out my equally good Hawaiian shirt selection. Since this is cap and gown pickup day for my daughter, I'm starting with my black and gold Hawaiian shirt, and not gonna lie to you, it's getting really hot out here in the garage doing this filming. So hopefully you are reviewing. Please go onto the College Board website, use your College Board student code, and please practice uploading your files for the exams. Today we're going to keep in the theme that we were going. We're starting, way back early and working our way forward, doing, subject specific. So we finished with Incas, Aztecs, Mayas. Today we are going to do the kingdoms of Africa, and this will take us outside of our 200 to 450 window and get us deep into 1450 to 1750. And tomorrow we're going to do the age of exploration and the transatlantic trade. We'll do trade routes, and then we'll end with the age of absolutism. By then you guys should have videos for the rest of the year. So Africa. Now, Africa is this large, massive continent. 20% of the world's surface is taken up by the continent of Africa. And Africa is a wildly diverse continent, from north to south to west to east, this famous Serengeti Plain over here. It has a lot of natural resources. So along with that, there's a lot of ethnic and a lot of linguistic and religious diversity going on across the whole continent that will connect Africa to Asia here, and not too far from Europe across the Mediterranean as well. Now this, we most likely won't have on the exam, but we're going to throw it in there. One of the most often misexplained things is the Great Bantu Migration. That is incorrect. It is the Bantu migrations. And Bantu is a language root, like Latin is for the European Romance languages. And so the Bantu are going to move from Western Africa slowly to the southeast and then south. Now this is going to be a series of migrations that took place over 1,000 years. A group of Bantus would move, they would settle down, build a civilization when they needed more resources or were running out or the population was getting too big. They would move again. So slowly to the southeast and then the south. And as they did this, they did come into contact with others. They did displace some other natives. They did go to war with some. But they will spread their language root. They will also spread their knowledge of farming, herding, and iron making technology. So from 1500 BC down to 500. Coinciding with the Bantu spread is Swahili, a language that is a mixture of African and Arabic moving down the east coast of Africa. So here we have the great Bantu spread, going to the south and the east and then the south. And then over here in modern day little Somalia, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and Tanzania, a little bit of Mozambique and Zambia is where you're going to find Swahili spoken, Asante Sana, everyone. So we're going to start way up in the north over here. And we're going to start in the ancient kingdom of Nubia and Aksum. All right. Now, the ancient kingdom of Nubia, the Kush Empire, is located what is today in southern Egypt. All right. What is today we call the Sudan. So south of Egypt in what is today the Sudan. And here the people who traded with the ancient Egyptians are going to build a capital called Meroe. So it's sometimes called the Meroic Empire. And here they're going to have different interactions. Sometimes it was warfare with Egypt, and sometimes it was peaceful trading. Now, they're very important because south of Egypt, they control the middle section of the Great Nile River, which we know floods every July and would bring the life-giving silt to the people of Egypt. So down here, they're farmers. They raise a lot of cattle. And the people in Meroe are also known for high-quality ironwork. You can see in this picture, they have pyramid-like structures, like farther up north in ancient Egypt, their monumental architecture. They are just not quite as big. So they're here along the Nile River, very close to the Red Sea, where eventually we're going to get the Arabian civilization and the kingdom of Aksum. Remember, if you don't know, you can always Aksum in modern-day Ethiopia. Speaking of my Aksum joke, here is we have the very first real big kingdom in East Africa, all right, going on up into, the 7th century CE, up into the 600s. And today, it would be the country of Ethiopia. It's a really cool area. And this was a major trading center because it facilitated trade between Africa and the Middle East, but also on the Indian Ocean trade route. Is it this key area right here, all right, where the two continents almost touch down here in the Gulf of Aden. So it's this main crossroads connecting Africa, Europe, and Asia. And the people from Aksum are very good at exporting everything from animal hides to rhinoceros horns to the always valuable salt and gold, ivory, and eventually slaves. And most of what we know about ancient Aksum comes from inscriptions. Now they are mentioned, biblically in the Old Testament. It is again one of the supposed places, resting places of the Ark of the Covenant. Watch Josh Gage to check that one out on the Travel Channel. But what we do know comes from written inscriptions that describe the achievements of Aksum, written on giant steels or giant like obelisk, like Washington Monument shaped things. Also, they are mentioned by a lot of the other civilizations, the Israelites, the Assyrians, Arabs, they're in the Persians. They are mentioned by many other groups. Ancient Rome. And one of the most important kings is a guy named King Azana, who reigns during the decline of the ancient Roman Empire from 321 to 360. And Azana, like a lot of the guys we have talked about, conquers the kingdom of Nubia. So you have like Egypt in between, you had Nubia there in Meroe, and then down kind of diagonally along the Red Sea in Ethiopia, you have Aksum. Well, Nubia is conquered, and they burn the capital to the ground. And then as circumstance has it, King Azana will convert. He will become a Christian as Christianity is growing. And even before it is made the official religion of the Roman Empire, it is the official religion of the kingdom. And so King Azana is going to have coins made. I'll tell you about those in a second. And he's also going to carve out, like Corey, into this beautiful red stone churches, like the Church of St. George here. He's going to totally excavate an area and then chisel the church out of the quarry, and you take the steep steps down there to go into the church. Now, as we talked about the achievements, here's one of the steels here, these large stone pillars. And Ethiopia was difficult to conquer, especially during the growth and spread of Islam, for a couple reasons. Number one, they facilitated a lot of trade between Africa and the Middle East. But also, their terrain is very mountainous, right? So it's like attacking like Switzerland, a very mountainous, difficult area. And they were peoples of the book. They were scripture. They were people of the book, the people of scripture. So back to the mountains, because they needed to farm, they kind of invent the terraced farming that we will see them, some of the Mayas and the Incas really perfect. They did it here in Africa long before that, where they carved the ridges into the mountainside they kind of made those stair steps and flattened off and made plateaus so the monsoon rains would not wash all their seeds away and the soil. They will build elaborate irrigation canals to channel the water to the fields and hold it into reservoirs. To make trading easier, they coined money, and like we have in our coins, like, you know, in God we trust, and e pluribus, you know, unum. Well, I like King Azana's where he says, may the country be satisfied, may everybody be just happy, which is something that we need right now. And so Aksum is eventually going to fall. It's going to move its location from closer to the coast, deeper inland. And there they had access to their trading ports by the sea coast. The big problem is we really don't know why they did this. Some historians believe it was, you know, pressure from the outside. More advanced people came in and took over. Maybe it was famine and it was crop loss. Whatever the reason, they moved to the interior. And while Aksum will never officially be conquered by an outside civilization, by the year 630, Aksum seems to be dwindling. And it's here where we're going to pick up really the meat of our review today, and that is connecting the East over here with Aksum in Egypt with the great Trans-Sahara trade route that will run across the widest part of Africa. The Trans-Sahara trade route coming over from Ghana, over linking up into the Silk Road. So the Trans-Sahara trade, or the gold salt trade with the Silk Road, and down here with the Indian Ocean. And on the Trans-Sahara trade route, we're going to have two main goods throughout its time for your continuity here. It is gold and it is salt. Later on, slaves will be adding, but this is gold and this is salt. And gold was very prevalent over here in West Africa. And the three big kingdoms we're going to talk about: Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, or in Senegal. So, gold, everybody wanted it. Well, like the Aztecs over in West Africa, they had a lot of it. So the gold would be, you know, mined, quarried, washed, and then it was stuffed to be sold to trade in North Africa and Europe. The big thing that made Ghana super wealthy is this, like these big, like granite-looking slabs. This is salt. And because they lived in the desert, salt was necessary not only to prevent dehydration in this hot desert climate, but also it was the ancient world's food preservative. How you would preserve your fish, your chicken, your beef, your pork. It's what you had to have. And so salt is found pretty prevalently in and around the Sahara Desert, but it's scarce farther south. So if you can control gold to go up into, you know, North Africa and Europe and Asia, and salt to go south, man, you're just printing dollar bills. It's like being the CEO, whatever the guy, I forget the guy's name, that runs Amazon. So gold, or salt, was literally worth its weight in gold. It's where the term when you get paid your salary. Wages used to be paid in salt. The Romans built an entire town in Austria called Salzburg, you know, town of salt, for that very reason. And so over here, people started scratching their heads and say, man, we got a lot of gold, we got a lot of salt. What are we? Say it with me. Gonna do. All right, another bad world history joke. So right over here, what I call the shoulder socket of Africa, is going to be the foundational kingdom of West Africa, Ghana. And Ghana is going to control the north and the south and the east-west trade route running across Africa. And they'll start in 300 and they'll end just about the time of our time limit. They're important because they set the stage for the Trans-Sahara gold salt trade route running over here. And running through it is the great horseshoe shape, the great Niger River, one of the big rivers in Africa. We got the Nile, we got the Congo, And over here, we have the Niger. So think of like the Mississippi, the Missouri, and the Ohio River, the big rivers here in the United States, and when it comes to commerce and trading. And you have these three. So Ghana, as I said, is the foundational empire for West Africa. And contextually, as Rome is falling in Europe, Ghana is beginning to pick up. And it reaches the height of its power right in the middle of the dark ages of Europe. Think of like Charlemagne. And because it controlled all the trade routes and they monopolized the trade of gold and salt, they were extremely, extremely wealthy. And they were run by a king. The people were polytheistic. They worshiped the gods of nature, God of the wind, God of the rain, God of the sun, God of the moon. But their king was not seen as a living god like most others, but he was just a guy. But he was blessed by the gods. And unlike most other kings, he was seen as the supreme judge. So you'll see a picture here in a second. He would sit outside and his people had direct access to him. Something that didn't happen most people never saw their king, but you would come to the king to ask a question, to solve a dispute, to ask for help. So much more contact with his common people. The other thing is, when the king died, his son didn't take over, but it was the son of his oldest female relative, other than his mom or his wife. So sister, cousin, aunt, it was spread matrilineally because their chief goddess was Mother Earth. From, the earth all things come, coming out of the mother's womb. So a female was the most powerful entity. So anyway, the king will kind of like the Chinese emperors, will maintain a monopoly on all items everybody needed. Copper, used for tool making and cooking and drinking implements. Salt, which everybody needed to preserve their food. Cotton, and then silk and gold. So if you needed those things, you had to go get them from the emperor. So he kind of released them in little bits as he saw fit. So here is the king sitting with his attendants, and here are the people, common people, lining up to come and ask him a question. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of Ghana is left. You kind of look at these old ruins. A lot of it has fallen into desertification, and it is in West Africa where things are not stable all the time. Now, eventually, we're going to get a change. We're going to get this new group to come in, and it is Islam that will have a great influence on the kingdom as the birth and the spread of Islam comes across North Africa. Remember, the Muslims started out as traders. They're going to link into this gold salt route right here in Ghana before moving and going on up to Spain. And everything in Ghana was done orally. They didn't need a writing system because everything was passed down, verbally. Lessons, rules, codes of behavior. An important job was being a guru, G-R-I-O-I-T. What you did is you were a storyteller. You were a historian that held your nation's history and the lessons, like grandma teaching you how to make her secret recipe. Well, anyway, these Islamic merchants were going to settle in Ghana, and they had the mystical abilities of being able to read and write. And so the king is going to employ these Muslims as record keepers. And they're eventually going to be counselors and officials. And some of the people of Ghana will assimilate because it makes trading easy. And then around 1050 to 1100, a group of North Africans known as Almoravids will come in, and they are trying to spread their form of Islam. They're going to create destabilization and a war. While they are never able to completely conquer Ghana, Ghana's power collapses. And that brings us to Mali. Mali is going to be the second layer, it's going to build itself on the foundation of ancient Ghana. They're going to say, hey, what did Ghana do that was so good? Let's do the same thing. And so it was part of the Ghanaian Empire, but as a smaller city-state, it kind of breaks away and becomes a very, very powerful empire right at the very beginning of our timeline. Right? They're going to control a good bit of Western Africa from 1200 all the way up into the 1500s, when the age of exploration has already kicked off. Columbus will land in Hispaniola about 8 years before Mali collapses. And they're very important, especially historically here in the United States. One of the most important of all cities in West African trade is going to be built by Mali, the famous fabled city of Timbuktu. Because of the wealth made from trading, and the Islamic trade and Islamic learning, a lot of the Muslim merchants are going to become teachers. And so as a result, Timbuktu will become not only a leading trading city, but a leading intellectual and cultural city as well. So you have like Athens, Greece, you have Alexandria, Egypt, you have Constantinople, you have Rome, and in Africa, you have Timbuktu. And it started off by this guy, King Sundiata, who as a young boy had this big head and these big eyes, and he was kind of spindly and he would kind of fall over, and his dad thought that, oh my God, how can this be the heir to my throne? And he got him a special griot. And then Sundiata grew. And Sundiata becomes a powerful warrior and a very, very, very smart king. Sundiata will govern from 1232 to 1255. And a lot of the technological improvements and things that he is going to do while learning from the Islamic merchants is going to cause a massive population boom. New crops are going to come in, like bananas coming over from Southeast Asia and Madagascar, and he will build the once jungle fabled city of Timbuktu that is now kind of dried out in this this desert-like area. So anyway, the people of Mali live very similar to the ancient Greek city-states. Timbuktu was the big city, kind of like Athens, but the other Malian city-states were spread all over. Also very similar to the ancient Mayas. So this was the centerpiece. It was where the king ruled from, but there were these smaller regional cities. And it is Sundiata over here that is going to go out and conquer other people to access their resources and to turn them into slaves. The hard labor they did was a lot of the mining and the quarrying, but also growing sugar cane, which grew extremely well in the humid climate of the Niger River Delta. Sugar was a spice. It was big, big, big money. People thought it was magical. And so it is Sundiata that will start slaves working on plantations that the Portuguese, the Spanish, and the French will transport over to the Caribbean, South America, and the English in North America, and begin what we know as plantation slave labor. It is King Sundiata that will also begin working eventually his kingdom, not he himself, with the slave trade. The slave trade he dealt in was sending slaves eastward along the the Trans-Sahara trade route, going over into the Middle East. So the slave trade was going on in Africa, going over to Asia, and up into Europe long before it came to North and South America. And the core group of the people, here they are, the poor guys working this brutal sugar cane field you guys have heard me talk about, are the Melega people. Melega people were the core, the foundation of the kingdom of Mali. So they were the main Kita, or clan, or family group. Now they are famous here in the United States because famous University of Chicago professor Alex Haley traced his ancestry back to a young prince of Mali named Kunta Kinte, who came to North America as a slave. So it is the great book and the old and the new miniseries called Roots. And so here we are again harvesting the brutal, brutal work of sugar cane harvesting and banana farming as well. Now, besides Sundiata, Mali was ruled by kings called Mansas, and Mansa means supreme sacred ruler. So you're Mansa Sundiata, all right? Probably the greatest and most well-known of the kings of Mali is a guy named Mansa Musa. Now, Mansa Musa comes to power in 1312, and he's going to rule for an extended period of 25 years, but it's his impact on Africa that's going to be big. He expands the borders of the kingdom of Mali. He goes north and all the way over to the Atlantic Ocean. So that's where we're going to run into some Portuguese merchants coming down. And Mansa Musa will convert to Islam. Sundiata did not. He worshipped the traditional African polytheistic or animistic gods. But Mansa Musa will convert to Islam. And he will begin to rule his kingdom along Islamic lines under the Quran. He gets ulama scholars over. They begin teaching in madrasas in Timbuktu. So he is importing Islamic culture into West Africa. So with that, he does not adopt everything. Some of the things like with the dress of women, he did not abide by. He kept that more traditionally African. But what he's most well known for is his Hajj in 1324, where he travels the Trans-Sahara trade route over to Cairo and then into Mecca, where he went on his Hajj, the 5 of the 5 pillars of Islam. And as he did, he came into contact with other African kingdoms, other rulers, other people. So he builds diplomatic and economic ties. He will build schools. He will build mosques. He will hand out so much money. His wealth was incredible. It is Aladdin marching into Agrabah, or some of the excerpts taken from his Hajj. Now, in order to make this pilgrimage, Mansa Musa took 60,000 people. Again, think of us in Chapel Hill. That's almost the entire town. We've got around 70,000 when students are here. 12,000 of them were slaves. Not only did he have to take, the people, he had to take the food and the water and the transportation and the clothing. His entourage was huge. And so much so that 80 camels, all right, were used, and they carried between 50 to 300 pounds of gold that he just gave away to each city he traveled to. So much so that it caused massive inflation in Cairo, Egypt for a decade. And Egypt is a place that knew a lot of gold. So here is an ancient map of King Mansa Musa handing out gold. And the problem is, people in Europe who had been stuck in the Middle Ages are now going out exploring. So in this period, you've got the Crusades going on. You're getting ready to experience, the heart of the Renaissance. We've got the, Kublai Khan getting ready to conquer Song Dynasty, China, and over in the Americas, we've got the Aztecs and the Incas at their high point. This is going on. And Mansa Musa handing out this gold puts Africa back on the European radar. So it's good that they've got so much wealth, he can give it away, but it's going to have tragic consequences for Africa. Now, like we've seen time and time again, by the 1400s, Mansa Musa's descendants are weak, they're ineffective rulers, there is arguments over who should be the king, and the empire slowly disintegrates and breaks apart. Building on the ashes of Mali is the third great kingdom, Songhai. So we got Ghana, Mali, and now Songhai. And the Songhai Empire is led by their great king Soni Ali, who will not convert to Islam. But under Soni Ali, West Africa and Songhai becomes a massive imperial power. Think of like Darth Vader in Star Wars. He builds a flat-bottom naval flotilla. allowing him to sail along the Niger River, the Senegal, the Gambia rivers, and a horse-mounted cavalry. The Arabs were great cavalry soldiers, so all of a sudden you're a tiny village or regional empire. Here comes some boats. Flying off the boat, riding up the bank, carrying an iron sword, is a guy on a horse. It's terrifying, the speed and the power, so that'll allow Songhai to dominate West Africa. Now, Sonioli is going to die in 1492, right as Columbus is sailing the ocean blue, and by the time he's done, he's moved it deep into Africa, displacing his enemies. And Sonioli will be succeeded by a guy named Askia Muhammad al-Turi. And Turi wants to conquer all the way across the width of Africa. And unlike Sonioli, Muhammad al-Turi was a passionate, zealous Muslim. He wanted to go all the way across and turn his kingdom into a perfect model of Islam. So he works carefully with trade routes to Central and North Africa, working with the Muslims. And he brought scholars. Now, Mansa Musa brought some back, but not as many as Askia Muhammad al-Turi. And as he brings in the Muslims, if he had farmers on the outlying part of his kingdom, he would kick those farmers out, give their neighborhoods to his new Arabic Islamic buddies, and then displace his own people. Now, one of the things he tried to do was he tried to compete with the image of Mansa Musa, something that he just could not do. No matter what he did, he was never able to, I'm going to create Sarah Palin here, Islamize his empire to his deepest expectations. So his empire will collapse in 1591 when a group of Moroccans come in with smoothbore muskets and gunpowder and are able to defeat the great Songhai Empire. So the important takeaway here is, what did Mansa Musa, Sonioli, and Muhammad have on West Africa? Well, again, while Western Europe was trapped in the Dark Ages, in Africa there were thriving, powerful, flourishing kingdoms. But Mansa Musa's Hajj is going to bring that unnecessary attention from Europe, who is bursting out of the Renaissance into the age of exploration, and the Europeans are going to come down, namely the Portuguese, who are looking for gold. Gold brings the Portuguese and the Europeans to Africa, but it is sugar and slaves that will keep them coming back for centuries. The slave trade, quickly picks up. Instead of going to Asia, now they're going to go with the slave traders to the New World. It is going to be change not only Africa's economy and population, but the entire world economy as well. So these three have a lot of influence on what happens up and coming. And over in the shoulder socket is modern-day Senegal and Gambia, the Senegal and Gambia rivers, just straight down from Portugal. Because they are the closest and part to Portugal, and they've got these rivers, they are the first people to experience the effects of the slave trade. Portuguese still have a couple of these old slave forts where I told you the slaves would be trapped. They would be chased down here through like this, trench, kind of like, think of yourselves at the cattle rows at an amusement park, where you would be chased aboard a slave ship, the hatch would be closed, and off you would go. Most of them have been torn down because it made the Europeans feel bad. There are a few that are still there. And coming over to Africa from the age of exploration are going to be American crops like corn, potatoes, and beans that will grow very well in West Africa. These high protein foods that can be prepared many different ways leads to a massive population boom in Africa, making territory and resources more scarce, so hence the competition and the slave trade. Now, the amount of gold that the people in Senegambia had briefly kept them safe, but as the British and the French follow on the heels of the Portuguese and the Spanish, they come looking for gold. They also want salt, they also want copper and cotton, but they find out that all those things will also grow in the New World and they need labor. So slavery will quickly take root, as in the century from 15 to 1600, 1/3 of all slaves taken from Africa. All right, we know documented between 11 and 13 million. So you're looking at 3 to 4 million people are taken from this region. Africans on the coast would go inland, conquer their rivals, and bring them out to be sold. Not only did it keep them safe, but now they got access to resources on the interior. And so this part of Africa will be named for the main resource. There is the Ivory Coast, the Gold Coast, the Pepper Coast, the Salt Coast. If you needed that commodity, that is where you went. Now eventually, population is going to decline, and Portuguese slave traders are going to come down, and one of the few rivers, one thing about Africa as a big continent, doesn't have a lot of deep water ports, like big harbors like New York Harbor or San Francisco Harbor or Tampa Bay that you can sail into. So this is one of the few where they get into the Congo River. Now the mighty Congo and its hundreds and thousands of little branches is so big it almost bisects like the stomach and rib cage area of Africa. Again, looking at the human torso. The Portuguese are going to go there looking for gold, but they don't find it. But they find slaves, and they bring along things to trade, things such as alcohol, tobacco, even sugar, things that will be used up and consumed, and the Africans will want more of. Clothing, some silk, some mirrors, some ironwork, anything that will accentuate the power of the chief. And they'll say, hey chief, we'll give you more of this, but we need some slaves. So the chiefs allowed the Portuguese to go deep into Africa, pitting, if there is one village on the west side of the river and one side on the east side, they'll actually do battle to keep themselves safe from these slave traders. And this brings in one of my favorite characters, King Afonso I. Now he is a young king that was educated by Portuguese missionaries, and he works hard to stop this practice. He says, hey, he wrote a letter, I'm an African Christian king to the king of Portugal. You gotta stop taking my people. Christian king to Christian king. And the Portuguese king said, well, yeah, you're a Christian king, but you're an African one. So you're kind of like a JV king. I am a real powerful European king. And Afonso says, dude, you got to stop taking my people. And missionaries come down. And they want to put a stop to this, but they realize so much money can be made. They're quickly corrupted. Even some of King Afonso's own government officials undermined him because they were getting rich. But through just sheer tenacity and hard work, King Afonso was able to restrict the Portuguese to just one port, Port Noir, Black Port, to keep them out. Now the Portuguese try to assassinate him, and this has the opposite effect. When people find out the Portuguese tried to kill their king, they have a boycott of Portuguese goods, they strike, and it results in a thing known as the Yago Wars between Congo and Portugal. Now, the civil war that will happen is the people who wanted to keep the Portuguese and their allies out will just terribly strip down the power of Congo and allow the Portuguese to reassert their control. And it is the slave trade that will really destroy a wealthy, powerful kingdom. Here are some of the slaves being brought in, and here's all that's left of the slave fort on top as you would go out the Congo directly to the Atlantic Ocean. And this is going to bring us to East Africa. Now, the Portuguese in our story tomorrow when we do Prince Henry the Navigator are going to try and leapfrog their way by sailing a little bit farther and a little bit farther, charting the coastline of Africa until they get down here where they get to the Cape of Good Hope. And it's called that for two reasons. Number one, you hoped you made it around alive. And two, you hoped you would get rich because they thought India would be right here instead of being way over here. So this was faster than going over land. And the Portuguese want to hook into this. And they find out that over here in the east, there is a strong trade network between East Africa, the Middle East, and all the way over into the Indian Ocean. Well, the Portuguese will eventually make it around the Horn of Africa. And they see the Islamic traders are like, hey guys, can we get in on this? The people of Africa and the Arabic traders said, no, what do you have that we need? Portuguese said, well, if you won't let us play, your ships are merchant ships and ours are built for war. So they attack and they destroy the Indian Ocean and Arabic trade on the east coast from Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, Ethiopia, and Kenya. So much economic destruction was done that a lot of these areas really have not recovered to this day. There were also Islamic trading ports around here. Think of like, Portland, Maine, and Hartford, Connecticut, and New York, and I don't know if I put Boston in there, Baltimore, Norfolk. They were all blown up by the Portuguese because nobody wanted to trade with them. So Indian Ocean trade takes a big hit as the Portuguese men of war ships come in, and if you won't let us play, and you can see all the trade going on with the Middle East, with East Africa, and in between Southeast Asia and China, well, this is what the Portuguese are going to disrupt. All these trade routes coming in from East Asia and some of the islands in the Pacific. And this will bring us to the bottom of Africa. Inland, these are some of my photos, is a great civilization known as Zimbabwe on the Limpopo and the Zambezi rivers. Because they were inland, the Portuguese didn't know that they were there. And the gold trade there, a lot of alluvial gold in the rivers. So the people traded gold, and we don't know how this happened, but just like Mali and the Greeks and the Mayas, the people of Zimbabwe lived in different city-states. We have found porcelain from China and other artifacts from Persia, Iran, in Zimbabwe, and we have found Zimbabwean artifacts in Iran and in China. Nowhere else. So where was this trade? How did this happen? Was there a mediator? Was there a direct trade between the three groups? We really just don't know. But the people of Zimbabwe will build these Greek-like cities. Here we have the large Acropolis in the middle, where there was the main temple to the gods. There was grain storage and a water well. The rest of the nobles and high priests lived outside, in the city wall. And then just outside the city wall is where the farmers are. So you've got the nobles living in the city, and then you've got, the country guys out here farming. And here's a picture of the giant grain silo that I passed that Pisa round. And the people of Zimbabwe were good with woodwork. They were good at gold, and they were great at stone carvings. The main group is known as the Shona people, and they kind of kept to themselves and were able to, same time, the 12, 13, 14, 1500s, to stay out of the way and harmed by the Portuguese. But just below them in South Africa, we're going to get, so Zimbabwe is going to be like right in here. Down in here in South Africa, we're going to get the Dutch, who are trying to, a very powerful but small maritime empire. The Dutch were beginning to rival like the Spanish and the British and the Portuguese. So in 1652, getting ready to make the run around Africa, they stopped near the southern tip to fill up on fresh water, maybe some meat, some fresh fruit, to make the trip across the Indian Ocean. And so there they set up an outpost for the Dutch East India Company, a joint stock company that will be set up where different investors will invest in the ship and the captain and the crew. And if that ship makes a run to India and back and all the cargo is sold, you get the profits from it, like investing in like Google or Apple or Zoom, like everybody is right now. So let's just say, you know, the return is massive. You give $100, all right, and the ship goes over and back, you will wind up with your profit with $1,000. So $10,000 becomes $100,000. So it was crazy wealthy. So the Dutch East India Company, making money, will start trading with the local peaceful, herders, the Khoikhoi. They get their water, some meat, maybe some salt, some fresh fruit. Well, after being on the ship for a long time, some of the Dutch guys don't want to get back on. So they stay there and set up a permanent colony. And little by little, the trading depot gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And these Dutch people, who are now Africans, begin to be called Afrikaners, all right? They are Dutch people born in Africa who are Africans, but their ancestry is Dutch. Now they begin to dominate the poor Khoikhois. Instead of trading with them, they displace them, they build plantations, they build big houses, they put up fences, displacing the Khoikhois from their traditional grazing, herding, and migrating routes. The Khoikhois will revolt, but the superior weapon technology defeats them, and they will be turned into just pretty much wage laborers. The Dutch will hang on to this area for a long time until they are displaced by the British in the Boer Wars. Well, the British will take over from the Dutch and begin to exploit the people with the political system known as apartheid that didn't die out until 1990, 1991 with the election of Nelson Mandela. But the people of Africa, are empire builders. They're great merchants and traders. They're very good at carving wood and stone and gold. They also have a lot of wonderful fables and folk tales, like the scorpion and the frog. If I take you over, you'll sting me and kill me. And the scorpion says, well, why would I do that? I'll drown too. And the frog says, makes sense. Frog starts swimming across the water, and the scorpion sticks him. And the frog says, why'd you do that? Now we're both going to die. And the scorpion says, well, it's just my nature. It's like a tiger not being able to change his stripes. And an animal burned by the embers will think twice before touching fire. And we have once bitten, twice shy. So all these rich, wonderful things come out of Africa. Here will be the Cape Colony. Up in here is Zimbabwe and the Khoikhoi Rebellion, which they, here are the peaceful Dutch guys, like little Quaker-looking guys, and then it turns into this, which they unfortunately lost. So there it is, guys. There is Africa. Tomorrow, much shorter, the age of exploration.